everybody. This is Brooke from Fascia Freedom Fighters. I'm very excited today to be talking to Sue Hitzmann. So Sue is the creator of the MELT method, and I actually have the book here too, although it's behind you as well. The author of the MELT method book, which I have just finished reading in the last couple of weeks. And I'll be honest, I've heard about your work for a few years now, and totally honestly, I was like, that's great. Like, there's someone out there who's teaching people like awesome resources about foam rollers, which I know is going to make you cringe. Because then I finally picked up the book and read the book, and it was just like, and you describe it as hands-off body work or hands-free body work, and I thoroughly got the difference when I got into your book. That first of all, you're not the foam roller girl at all. And what you're not using it as a conventional foam roller. It's much softer. It's contacting a completely different tissue layer, which is the fascia.
I have it right here.
I'm waiting on mine. I've got mine like back order. Oh, so yummy.
Soft roller. That's what you need. I mean, it's a different thing. Well, I'm sure we'll talk about that.
Yeah, totally. And so really like the way that you're addressing the fascial network in people's systems, I think it's so bright and very holistic, as opposed to these sort of spot area treatment things, like, and now work out on your delts. Yeah. And I really, your book, for those who are listening, because we do have some fashion nerds, obviously, who find the site called Fascia Freedom Fighters after all, even though we're mostly talking about rehabilitating pain. Your book is one of the best resources I have come across, that it just really succinctly and yet in a very informative way talks about like, what is this stuff? What are all the many things that fascia encompasses, and what does it do, and what is it responsible for? So thank you for putting together such a great resource on what fascia is, but also developing such an amazing system, and for talking with us today.
Thank you.
So there were a lot of goodies in the book that I want to get into. And one of the first, since I'm talking about fascia now, is just this idea of fascia dehydration and what that means for people. So can you speak a little bit to what that is? Because when a lot of people hear that, they don't know what that means or what that impact is.
Well, I mean, in today's day and age, everybody seems to be a myofascial expert. Everybody's talking about myofascia. You hear about it, and especially in the fitness and the bodywork world, there is, I still feel quite a misconception about what fascia is. And because the myofascial research came out and kind of got dumped into fitness without really people having a clear conception of what fascia really is as a system, it's actually gotten almost more blurry than it was before anybody knew anything about it. So as much as we're myofascial experts, what people need to understand is that the connective tissue is a system. It is a three-dimensional fluid-based system that begins at the skin and goes clear down to the bones. And it's hard for people to understand, like, how could a fluid system be the stability system? How can fluid make something stable? And what you have to understand is that we're talking about this on a very microscopic level, on a cellular level.
Right.
The cells of our connective tissue are called fibroblasts, and the fibroblasts are the cell that are producing all of the stuff outside of every other cell that holds our structure stable. So it is the cell that produces collagen and elastin and the reticular fibers that keep your organs suspended. It's what creates hyaluronic acid, and the proteins in what we call the extracellular matrix, or our fascial system, are glycoaminoglycans, and these are the proteins that pull fluid into the extracellular matrix to hold it stable. It's actually almost creating more of a viscous tissue. It's got thickness to it. It's not like, it's not like water. It's not like this. It's more like cornstarch. It's like cornstarch and water. It actually has some structure to it. And when we talk about dehydration, what we're seeing in research is that if you are constantly pulling on connective tissue as a system, if you create constant tension or constant compression, like when we sit for long periods of time, or we do the same repetitive motions, we're seeing connective tissue as a system become strained. And in those strain areas, the fluid quantity, the fluid content decreases.
Yeah.
And as that starts to occur, that increases stress and strain in the whole system's ability to keep your body stable, especially in an upright posture or through motion. And, we would think, well, gee, if it's hydration, then it must just be we need to drink more water.
Right.
But, ask anybody who is cellularly dehydrated, who obviously doesn't know that that's what's going on. But if they are, they'll just say, drinking more water just makes me pee more.
Right.
And what you're realizing is that in the connective tissue system, this is where cellular absorption actually occurs at the onset. This is where fluid is absorbed first before it's dispersed to other cells. So if you're just peeing it out, you're actually recognizing that you have poor cellular absorption. And this concept, these ideas that I'm talking about, are so far beyond any myofascial understanding or how the use of connective tissue has been applied to movement or body work or exercise. And to me, it's actually more important when you look at connective tissue, not on the macro level of just posture and performance and muscles, but you look at it on the micro level of nutrient absorption, of cellular stability, and of neurological information going through your body. Connective tissue is the highway that all of these things occur in. And, it's a much bigger concept. So the MELT method really was my attempt to shed light on just the broadness and the beauty of this structural stability system, to educate people, not just on the macro views, but on the micro views of what connective tissue is.
Yeah. And I'm sure that, people listening who haven't had a chance to experience MELT are wondering, like, well, what's special about MELT that you can actually access the fascia on that micro level and not just the macro level?
Right. Well, and, so MELT actually spawned out of my private practice. I'm a hands-on body worker. I know, Brooke, that you are as well. Now, you do Rolfing. So the tradition, and I've been Rolfed many, many times and have a background in neuromuscular therapy, which is, more on that heavy compression concept. And Ida Rolf, who was really that originator of this idea that she was creating plastic deformation of connective tissue, or that it really needed, heavy compression to adapt change.
The old days were a different time, for sure.
Well, and so what we're learning is actually you can adapt connective tissue very quickly in a light touch way. And I'm a light touch therapist. I have studied literally a dozen different modalities in light touch techniques. And what I can tell you is I can make monumental global changes in people's bodies on that micro level with my hands-on approach. And that's what I had been doing for years. And it really spawned out of one client saying to me, Sue, if you could just invent a way to teach people how to do to themselves what you do with your magic hands, I think you would help so many more people. And I thought, I never really thought about that.
Well, I love that you ran with that. Thank goodness.
This is 12 years in the making, more, because I started hands-on body work, neuromuscular work came to me when I was 23. So you're talking about the early 90s. And, it's so many years of having a concept of what connective tissue was and what myofascia is and how the body operated on a neuromuscular level, that when I started understanding the cellular adaptability of the cells of connective tissue, it literally unraveled me as a therapist. And that's where that light touch concept really started to land for me, as to how light could you work on a body and make global change. And MELT has offered literally now, because of the book and being on Dr. Oz and, having 500 instructors across the country, I've really been able to expand my hands-on therapeutic concepts out to 100,000 people, which is, 10 times what I could have ever done, just from today. And hopefully it'll be 100 times that over the years of this information getting out. It's really, it's a much different concept than I think what people are viewing, because they see me on the roller on the front of the book, and so they think, oh, it's foam rolling.
Right. She's going to teach me how to get my quads really finally. Yeah, right. And reading the book is beautifully put together for anyone who hasn't picked it up and is debating it, because it really gives people that idea of viewing the body holistically and really working on this micro level, and just how it doesn't at all resemble, it's not like some version of the foam roller thing. It doesn't resemble it at all.
That's right. Well, and you see people, I say this all the time, you see people when they get on foam rollers, and again, the problem is everybody's a myofascial expert, and the concepts of, Rolfing or hands-on therapeutic techniques, these are so refined and so wonderful. And unfortunately, with the foam roller, it's really just gotten so blurred down that if you go online, like you go to YouTube and you type in foam rolling, you're going to see a lot of people that seem very educated saying to you, iron yourself like a shirt, roll back and forth, land on an area that hurts you, and sit on it, and then dig on it. So you're going to win an award for popping a bubble of pain. And the reality of it is, if you're in pain, causing more pain to get out of it really makes no sense. It does not value. And I have had so many Rolfers work on me over the years, both good and bad. But the quality Rolfer, somebody like Tom Myers or Robert Schleip, and I'm sure you, Brooke, although I've never had you work on me, have that mindset where, quite frankly, a quality Rolfer isn't just going to iron you like a shirt, or
hopefully not.
Like as being the intent. When you have connective tissue dehydration, this is going to increase the sensitivity of the sensory nerve endings. It overexcites mechanoreceptors, and really understanding and having a better education of how not to inflict pain on your clients and still make resolve is still needing to edge into those heavier compression concepts. But for sure, people do not know how to foam roll properly. And, my goal with using a soft roller is to educate people that it does not need to hurt. Nothing of melt hurts. But you really don't need to hurt yourself to get out of pain. And those old concepts that just keep getting regurgitated, somebody needs to put a stop to this, and I'm going to do it.
No more mashing on tissue.
Stop hurting yourself.
Stop mashing.
Yes, please melt and don't inflict pain, because really it makes a much bigger change. And the great thing about melt is it really does service such a broad scope of human, from a 90-year-old who is sedentary, to a 50-year-old who's never exercised, to somebody who has chronic pain, to a performance athlete or a young teenager, or we have kids who melt, who are managing ADD and ADHD or stress issues. So it's a really profound method, and don't let the roller fool you in that protocol in the book.
Yeah, and I just wanted to talk with you a little bit about when you use melt and you're able to get that rehydrating on the micro level of the fascia. We've been kind of on a bit about anti-aging on the site. Not necessarily in the look cute as you get older vein, although I'm a big fan. I have no problem with that. But also just in the sense of like being able to continue to lead an independent life into your later decades, that you don't have to worry about balance or breaks, but also, just having a youthful appearance. And so I know that you talk about that a bit in the book, and can you talk about how that fits in? You even bring up the big one, cellulite.
Wrinkles.
Which, wrinkles and cellulite, and everybody's looking for a way to, I'm a body person. I like to just get in there and have my explorations. But also looking cute in jeans is not it's not the worst thing in the world.
Well, actually, I'm in my 40s, and so I see my body adapting and changing as I age, the wrinkles, things.
Well, and you look like you're 21 too, and I just want to point that out to people, because I say all the time, I have so many colleagues in the fascial world who I always assume are 10 to 15 to 20 years younger than they are. And I've gotten myself into trouble before. I'm like, oh, you must have studied with so-and-so. And they're like, she studied with me. I'm like, well, no, you're 23. And they'll be 43. And I think that there is a fountain of youth in healthy fascia.
Yeah, well, I mean, we have been looking at the musculoskeletal model for decades and decades and decades, thousands of years. I mean, it's such a foundation of basic anatomy is to look at the muscles and the bones. But if what you want to do, and I mean, who wouldn't? Who doesn't want to live an active, healthy, pain-free life? I mean,
Hmm.
everybody, right? If you
Yeah.
ask me, do you want to live a long life with no pain, look great, feel great? I can't imagine
I'm
somebody
gonna
would
take a big
want
old pass.
that.
Yeah.
So
No.
I could think of something else to do with my life. I mean,
Right.
it's the obvious. So when you ask people, well, what are you doing proactively to bring yourself to a place of having a long, healthy, pain-free life? And people will say, I eat a healthy, balanced diet, I exercise, I engage in movement or activity every day. And I say, okay, and how's that working for you? And the dirty little secret of fitness is that lots of people eat right and exercise and they still have pain.
Yeah, for
In fact,
sure. Really
85%,
common.
yeah, 85% of people who engage in fitness, in fact, have chronic pain. And that's a problem. Hi, Baron. That's a
Hi, kitty. That's okay. Cats are
that
welcome.
is that is a problem that many people end up having over their lifetime. And what's missing is this understanding of just what you said is there is a literally a missing link. There is a part of our youth that is not explored, harnessed, or even tapped into from
Mm,
general exercise or eating right. You can eat a great diet and still have connective tissue dehydration, still have pain,
yeah.
because life is dehydrating every single day. What we're understanding about connective tissue is that because it's a fluid system, it is constantly adapting, morphing, compensating, and adjusting to our day-to-day habits. So
Yeah.
you can't get rid of your habits. If I said sitting was your problem, what are you going to do, stand up all day? Okay, so now standing is your problem. Like, to get rid of one problem, you're going to make another. So instead of having to change your whole life, the thing is to learn what's missing and what to add. And what most of us in the field who are exploring connective tissue and looking at it beyond the confines of the myofascial layer, but actually looking at it as a system, you
Hmm.
have to understand that your skin is not a smooth surface. Like, if ever your skin has gotten dry and you see those little triangular shapes,
Right.
or we take for granted we can pull up on our skin and then let it go and it goes back to where it was. What's allowing that to occur are those tethers of collagen and elastin that are under the first layer of your epidermis. It's not in those layers. It's in the deeper layers that
Mm,
are creating the structure from the skin down to your bones. So connective tissue provides the support for every aspect of your body, from the common things that people know about, from your muscles and your bones to your skin staying taut. To those more finite structures of your cells, of your nerves, of the blood vessels. It's the grid, it's a flexible scaffolding, and it is completely continuous. In dissection, we can cut it up and we can look at layers, but in a living body, there's no separation. From the skin to the bones, you could follow one piece of collagen and see it pierce through every structure down to your bone.
mm,
Literally, a single tether could be that constructed, whereas other fibers will be smaller. And what we call the space in between the fibers are microvacuoles. And these microvacuoles morph and adapt to our movements, but only do that when it's hydrated. And
yeah.
so, again, when you sit for long periods of time, you're constantly pulling on the tissue in the same
Right.
way.
Which
And
none of us do in our
that's right.
culture.
So you decrease the potential for these microvacuoles to open, to morph, and to adapt.
Mm,
And that really can become such a problem for people, because then you're just always working on those same pieces of tissue, which over time dehydrate, because collagen needs water to bind. That's how it makes the helix, and it binds to create its strength. So
mm,
when the microvacuoles are not integrated, when there's not movement and adaptability and there's not the squish in tissue, it literally gets dried out like a dried out sponge. It becomes less flexible, less resilient. And so instead of these layers and levels of your body that are definable, like tendons and organs and muscles, they don't glide against one another anymore. They kind of pull and tack, so that
yeah.
suddenly, you ask somebody to bring their arm up and their whole body has to move for their arms to move as well. So we really have to understand that the connective tissue and its fluid system is quite an architectural system that's going to keep you youthful over your whole lifetime. And the older you get, the more propensity you have for pain, simply because you've had more repetition, more days on the planet, time over tension, overload. We're exhausted. Our bodies are exhausted. And so the connective tissue just over time starts to break down. However, we are recognizing in research that fibroblasts are reactive cells. And if you compress them for short periods of time, or you pull on the tissue for short periods of time and then let it go, it fills the system back up. It actually brings fluid to those microvacuoles and it plumps them back up again. That's profound.
The springy comes back. It is profound. It's a beautiful thing.
Right. And that's what we need to realize, is that it's a restorative system. You can restore it. You just need to know how. And it doesn't take heavy compression. It doesn't take a lot of time. And it doesn't take a lot of effort. And that is hard for people to wrap their mind around, because there is this mindset that it has to hurt. We have to cause pain. We have to feel something happening for something to be happening. And that's the emotional component of, if I don't feel it, it's not working.
And just a culture where we feel like we have to always work our asses off.
That's right.
At anything. Something must be a struggle for it to exist.
No gain, right. We've got to work hard to get something good to come out of things. But wouldn't it be nice if things were just easy and took just a few minutes? And I'm saying life can be easier. It can be. It can feel great. And I'm in my, like I say, in my 20s, I was personally in a lot of pain. And in my 40s, I walk around pain-free, because I know how to address this system, and I know it for myself. I know it for my clients. This is really the resource. This is the source of where pain comes from. People don't realize that pain becoming chronic is really the cause of connective tissue dehydration.
Absolutely. And you can reverse age, like you said, and that's the story of my life. I mean, my childhood and adolescence and early adulthood were riddled with pain, and now at 38, that's not the case. And it's not because somebody handed me a magic wand, although I guess kind of sort of somebody did, when I discovered this system, working in the fascial system, and that can change, that can go away if you address it. You don't have to just downward spiral into aging.
That's right. This too shall pass. Pain does not need to become chronic.
Yeah.
It doesn't need to be chronic. I agree.
And one other, in the book, when you talk about some short sequences that people can do, like you're saying, it doesn't have to be this kind of, sweating it out for 45 minutes is not what's going to happen when you're doing melt. And there's one in particular that I'm really very much looking forward to getting my roller, which I only don't have because they're back ordered, because you're very popular these days.
On the way.
But when you talk about and differentiate what the neurocore is, that's what you call it in your book, and how to access that. And I think that we're at a time right now where the word core is beyond trendy and beyond misunderstood. And a lot of people are, so instead of just strengthening my rectus abdominis, a six-pack muscle, I will also strengthen these muscles.
Right.
But, and that's a lot of the way people are kind of taking on this concept of the core. And I just wanted you to talk a little about the neurocore, because it's a complete 180 from this view of like, more stuff to strengthen, and how you can actually be supported from the inside out.
In writing the book, there's so many pieces of my understanding that I was trying to infuse into this book to really give people that big, broad scope. And so to simplify it for people, I developed what I call the 4 R's of melt: reconnect, rebalance, rehydrate, and release. And the rebalance, which is in chapter 6, that's what you're talking about. Rebalance is about educating people on what stability is about. Like, my whole concept is you can't be efficiently mobile if you're inefficiently stable. So what is it that keeps you stable? And the answer is, it's not really muscles and bones that keep you stable. The neurofascial system, the nervous system, and connective tissue are the primary systems of stability. Connective tissue is the stability system of the body. It's the architectural stability system. In understanding how it works, like how does the nervous system and the connective tissue relate? The thing about connective tissue is that it doesn't get neurological impulse. It's not like your heart that's getting messages from the brain. It is independent. It functions independently of neural response, which is really profound. And so that's why it's so compelling in research to try to understand it, because that's why we called it a packing material. You know, it's just this stuff that was just passively supporting things. Only there's moving, living elements in connective tissue. It's not like earrings. It's not an accessory item.
Yeah.
It's a system. And fibroblasts, again, are responsive. But the question then becomes, how does the nervous and connective tissue relate? And it's a twofold answer to be able to answer this idea of the core. Is that one element of it is that the connective tissue is the environment that your sensory nerve endings live in. So if the environment is not stable, the sensory nervous system is going to become more and more exhausted. The body has to work harder and harder to relay good information to the brain. The brain's got to work harder and harder to decode those messages to then send down adequate response. And so it's one of the first catalysts in instability, and why instability occurs, which is, again, why when you become older, you become more and more unstable.
Yeah.
So this concept of a core, in traditional concepts of core, if you ask somebody in fitness what is the core, they're going to define the core as being a muscle system. It's a system that stabilizes the spine and the abdomen through muscle strength. And I say, okay, but then how does it work? And people can't answer that. They can, you know, now if you ask people, what is the deep core? They'll say it's transversus abdominis, multifidus, it's the pelvic floor, it's the diaphragm. They can define the muscularity of it, the musculature of it. But when you ask again, how does it work? People just say it just does. And I said, well, see, here's the problem, is that we're trying to define a core as being a musculoskeletal model or a system. And it's actually a neurofascial. It's a dual neurofascial stabilizing system. And it works involuntarily. It works not from, you can't strengthen it through exercise. Neurological control, you're talking about reflexes, you're talking about grounding reflexes, rooting reflexes, you're talking about equilibrium reflexes, you're talking about core reflex, you know, stabilization. When people, you know, if I give you an example of walking on black ice and slipping, and they go, my gosh, I'm so happy I caught myself. And I'm like, well, you didn't catch yourself. Because if you had to catch yourself consciously, by the time you even knew you were falling, you'd be on the ground, and it would be 4 seconds after, and you'd be like, what just happened?
Yeah.
You know, when you catch yourself, it's not you catching yourself, it's the body's ability to sustain stability, get information through every joint of your body, proprioceptive-wise, to create stability. So when you think of your core, it's what I define in the book is what I call the neurocore, the neurological core system, which is a combination of two neurofascial stabilizing mechanisms. And we have dissected them many times with Gil Hedley, who is an amazing theologian and anatomist who does this layer by layer dissection. And when I began describing this model, Gil said, we should try to dissect it and see if it actually exists, what you define. And so
that's great.
So what we
I'm like fly on the wall moment, dream moment for me.
Yes, well, and so what we did was we went layer by layer by layer into the connective tissue, and in the sixth layer, the sixth deepest layer, is what Gil would define as the transversalis fascial layer. And it is a double bag. One layer goes around the sac, the gut, the wall of the peritoneum, which is that deep sac of the gut. So one layer is completely invested like a bubble, and it is completely continuous. But what we're realizing is that it's actually a double bag. And what would be great here, this is a great little explanation I just happen to have. Have you ever
Oh, yeah, those are awesome that way.
Right. So it's a double bag. So it's actually two layers that can glide against one another so that the structures around it move. So one layer, the inside layer, is around your gut. So my finger would now be your abdominal viscera.
Yeah.
The outside is what we call the rooting core or the grounding core, which literally goes from head to toe. There's no separation in it. It starts at the skull. It actually invests your skull fascia. It comes through the deep throat. It invests the pleura of the lungs. And then it's that double bag against the,
no, it's okay.
It's the double bag against the sac that we can call the reflexive core, which is that cylinder, the outer shell of it is the rooting system. And it is like a pipeline, and it invests your psoas muscle, which people think is a hip flexor. And my friend Liz Cook would say it's not a hip flexor.
Yeah.
Actually,
right.
it's like the filet mignon, she says. It's the girth that really is the communicator between your head and your feet. It's the pipeline, it's your midline. It's where in embryology we see the cells finally go into that row, flip back over and flip back around to create the two compartments of the body, to then build the human form. And this system is so complex. It's so misunderstood. But what people need to know is that it's connective tissue that's holding the signaling so profound. It's not the muscles. It just isn't. The muscles, yes, they are invested in this system, but the muscle aspect of the neurocore is the least important element of how the system stays responsive, stays adaptable, and stays flexible and mobile, so that you can acquire stability without thinking about it. I mean, if you're thinking about stability or movement, I'll guarantee you're not stable and you're not moving very well.
Yeah.
Because when you're stable, you are efficient, because your nervous system functions efficiently to get your body dynamic in its motion. And for many of us, we are so dehydrated in the connective tissue, it cannot hold us stable. And so now what we're doing is we are just exhausting our body's internal resources. We are becoming less and less efficient. And over time, our bodies can't compensate anymore to keep us stable. And that's when, your joints compress, your body distorts its posture. And now you have muscle imbalance and joint pain and joint damage and all these things that we can identify. But those are just symptoms of this neurocore not holding stability and not acquiring head-to-toe connection, to basically manage the balance of your head, your ribs, and your pelvis over that small base of support being your feet in function. The neurocore is really a profound model that I developed to try to explain these huge concepts for the layman. And in the book on chapter 6, it's so simple a model to just say there's a pipeline that keeps your head, your ribs, and your pelvis stable by creating constant communication through the pipeline. But there's another layer of it that's trying to support, protect, and stabilize your gut, your spine, and that internal integrity. And you cannot exercise your way into creating that co-coordinated, unified stability system to function better. It's just not through exercise.
It's not a get stronger thing.
That's right. It's not about strength. It's more about the timing that is lost from repetition, from compensation, and from aging. And so what I developed, and this was one of the ones that actually took the longest time for me, was to develop what I call the rebalance sequence, to actually stimulate the sensory nervous system and your autonomic nervous system, which is what regulates stability in the first place. It's what manages stress, repair, and absorption or digestion. How do you tap into that system without overstressing the system even more than it's already stressed out? It took time, but that rebalance sequence takes 10 minutes. It is nothing more than doing the reconnect, the assessment technique of lying on the floor, coming up on the roller, doing some gentle rocking, helping your autopilot acquire its connection to your pelvis through the tuck and the tilt and the 3D breath breakdown, stimulating that reflexive and rooting mechanisms through a forced exhalation, and then coming off the roller. And neurologically, it is amazing to see so many people feel that regulation change, and it's so easy to feel when it occurs, but it's not an exercise, and it just takes minutes. And so if you did that reflexive and rooting rebalancing sequence, if you did that, and then you did core exercises, you would actually strengthen your body more efficiently and in a much more efficient way, and you get more benefit out of any exercise that you think is strengthening your core.
Yeah, and for me, when I read it, it was such a light bulb moment because, like I said, I grew up with this birth injury, and I think it just was, for whatever reason, my neurocore was just off from this injury, and so it's like I felt like I always had to be moving myself through space and relying, and I still have this habit of relying on the real bulky extrinsic musculature,
Sure.
you know, and so it was such a great aha moment of like, oh, you know, it's not, you know, I don't think anyone can tone a psoas, but I think a lot of people have an idea that you can tone your psoas, you know, you can
Well, and that's it, is that in this
beef
day
it
and
up.
age, we keep, you know, like making psoas the bad guy, you know, like people say, oh, it's too tight, it's too short, it's out of balance, it's weak. I'm
Yeah,
like, you know what? Your psoas is part of the rooted core, and your rooted core is exhausted
right.
because the reflexive mechanism of core stability is delayed.
Yeah.
And that delay can occur from poor nutrition. It
Mm-hmm.
can be caused by a cesarean, by a surgery,
Mm.
by a birth trauma. I mean, like children have it.
Yeah,
It's
I've had it.
neurological. The neurological pathway can be altered, and it can come from stress. It can come from post-traumatic
Sure,
stress disorder, and again, it can come from digestive issues.
sure.
And core imbalance can cause digestive problems and poor absorption and inflammation, just as much as poor diet can cause the core to become out of balance. They're simpatico. They work together.
Yeah,
It's a
not just
profound
the
model.
Twinkies.
Yeah,
It is a profound model. Not just the Twinkies. And one of my favorite places to watch this is, you know, going to there's an indoor rock climbing gym in my town, and watching the guys who've been doing it for a long time, or the guys who just happen to have this neurocore on, and it's literally like they're levitating.
yeah,
They're moving without moving, and
yeah.
they literally have that kind of jungle cat thing going on,
Yes,
versus people who are newbies like me, or people who don't have the neurocore turn on, and you're grabbing and you're pulling and you're stepping and you're lifting, versus this like literal levitation up the wall, you know.
right. And that's just it. Is like, you know, your body doesn't, you know, your brain doesn't see muscle, right?
Mhm.
Like, as far as your brain's concerned, you've got one muscle with 700 compartments in it. You know,
Mhm.
it's one muscle system. So when you want to create movement, your brain doesn't care how it gets the job done, but as long as you're satisfied and you move, the brain's like, I'm done, thanks.
Yeah, right.
But the way that the brain operates to move you is through proprioception and mechanoreception. Your brain is trying to figure out where all of your joints are in space.
Mm.
That's what proprioception, or what I call body sense, is about. And for a
Mhm.
lot of us, because the neural core is out of balance, our body sense is so out of tone. And what I
Sure.
mean by tone is the readiness for it to respond is delayed because your brain can't figure out where your hand is in space. It just doesn't know, you know, like, so if you were to bring your arm up over your head and try to touch your finger, you might miss your finger because you don't know where your
Mm.
hand is. And you can
Yeah,
see that in clients. And
sure.
we take for granted that as long as we're moving efficiently. But that's what I'm trying to explain to people, is that the connective tissue is the stability architecture. Your nervous system relies on that communication highway to send information efficiently through the body. When connective tissue is dehydrated, it challenges your nervous system to work harder. And so
Yeah.
as you age, your body is getting more and more exhausted. It
Mm.
saps out your internal resources. And now not only are you getting like the pre-pain signals of, you know, sitting for long periods of time and your joints feeling stiff for a few
Mm.
minutes, but over time you get low-grade inflammation, your joints start to hurt you, your
Yeah.
digestion slows down, that exhausts your body more, and now you're getting more systemic issues. You're having trouble falling asleep, you're having trouble staying asleep, you're getting up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, you're having more food intolerances,
Mhm.
and you're just feeling in the middle of the day like you want to take a 3 hour nap. This is your sign that your connective tissue has been dehydrated for a long period of time, and your
Mm.
nervous system is what's being the most challenged. And my goal for people is to understand that the autonomic nervous system needs our care. And to go right after the nervous system is not the way to go. Go to the environment that the nervous system lives in, and then go to the nervous system.
Yeah.
And you'll make a bigger change. And this is so simple. It's so simple to do.
Mm.
And that is, like, I mean, I've managed to figure out a way to make a language that the general public can understand, something that people can do at home on their own,
Yeah.
regulate better efficiency in their nervous system in 10 minutes. I mean, why not do it? You know, why
Right.
not
I
try it?
know.
And if you are engaging in an active lifestyle, if you are exercising, then milk can become a quick 10-minute thing to do before you were to do
Yeah, I
with
mean, it'll really change your training and your
to improve
performance.
your efficiency. And really
Yeah.
it's to improve neurological efficiency so that your body's making better managed decisions over any motion you do. And it's just going to give you more results, and you're going to decrease your risk of injury and improve performance. And it's that simple. But this system is the stability system, very easy to tap into, only takes minutes a day, and it doesn't take heavy compression to do it. Anybody can do it.
Yeah, and so much of what you're talking about, that sort of the pre-pain symptoms that you mentioned in your book and that you mentioned just now, I think people just think of it as the white noise that you have to live with in your life, and
Oh
what
yeah.
you create, or spend a whole bunch of money on manual therapy, or just or acupuncture, stuff that people don't always want to invest in, and so here's a way.
Not that they don't want to. I mean, Brooke,
Mm-hmm.
listen, I just spent the last 3 months on a book tour and
Uh-huh.
did 80 events and melted 3,000 people across the
So
country
great.
in rural America, right? I wasn't in the biggest cities on the planet, although
Right.
I did, San Francisco, I did Los Angeles, but, like I was in Redlands, California, like I was in a suburb of Chicago where people are overweight, diabetic, injury, medications. They're so out of their bodies,
Yeah.
and it really is. It has to be simple for them, but
Mm-hmm.
they don't have time. They can't
Yeah.
afford. And quite frankly, they don't even know what acupuncture is or what
Sure.
rolling is, or most of them have never gotten a basic massage before. A lot of people don't like to be touched. I hate to
Mm-hmm.
say that, but a lot of
No, it's
people
true.
I don't want anybody rubbing my skin. Thank you very
No,
much.
it's true.
But
Yeah.
that's it. We actually, we, Brooke, you and I, we and the people that are going to listen to this are probably more the people who already are in the industry, who actually are
Right.
taking more of a proactive approach rather than reactive. We actually are the curious ones. We're already
Mm-hmm.
looking for the information. The general population assumes that when something's wrong, go to your doctor and take a pill.
Yeah.
And
Right.
I tell you something, if you are in chronic pain, one thing we definitely are identifying is, as much as medicine keeps trying to tell people that if you have a chronic pain, we've got a pill that's going to get rid of it, it doesn't work. Ask
Yeah.
anybody who has gone down that road if the medication is helping them with chronic pain, and most of them will say, actually, no,
Yeah.
but I've gotten a lot more symptoms than I
Yeah.
did
I
before by
live my
taking
life like I'm underwater now in this
it.
big fog. Yeah.
The middle America, I mean, our general population, you're talking about 100 million people in chronic pain. So there's
Mm.
certainly something missing, and
Yeah.
it's education. And, our pharmaceutical industry is really the ruler of the sick care industry, which is bigger than the healthcare industry. But our $1 billion industry is growing. And for those of us like you and who are body workers, Melt's not here to replace body work.
Yeah.
Coming to a body worker is really where it's at. My hope in developing this book was also to expose the general population to the fact that we're out here. We're hands-on
Mm-hmm.
body work is here. And if you find benefit in hands-off body work and doing things for yourself, imagine what going to somebody who is a skilled professional could
Yeah.
then get you to a new level, where then if you worked with a body worker and then melted, you would get more out of the body work, it would last longer, and you would integrate it more into your life, and it would become a better life, really.
Yeah.
So the general public is, it's not that they can't just afford it, they just don't know about it. They don't know that
Yeah.
are out there.
Yeah. Or that you don't have to suffer either, So
Yes.
thank you so much for that you don't have to just slowly degrade. So thank you so much for creating a method that's accessible and easy and really, I think, informative. Like you were saying, it's totally, I don't want to use the term gateway drug, but a gateway into, being more embodied, and then, seeking out and learning about other resources that might help them or
Yes.
just delight them. What do
Yes.
they like doing with their body?
That's right. There are so many resources. I mean, all of the all of my peers and people who have other hands off, what I would consider under the
Mm-hmm.
umbrella of hands off body work, that this is really, to me, again, Melt in what I put in the book is really that baseline. It's like, let's just get people in an understanding that they can get themselves out of pain, that they can
Mm-hmm.
help them. And I always say to my clients, help me, help you, help yourself. I'm not your mother. I'm not here
Right.
to take care of you every day. I want to empower you with tools that you can then go back to your life and not rely on me to live a better life. I want you to be able to do it every day for yourself.
Yeah.
And if this is the doorway into then people going, gee, are there other tools I could use? You know, like, could I use small balls on my spine? Could I, you know, use a smaller roller and, you know, work into self-myofascial release? Because listen, I am not against self-myofascial release.
Right.
You know, my friend Cassidy, who has trigger point therapy, you know, it's these heavier compression techniques of trigger points. They're very valid concepts. It's just a lot of people are not ready
Yeah.
to
No, I agree.
do those very refined techniques. And melt really is that broader sweeping scope. That's why the roller, the soft roller, was such a wonderful tool, is it gives you that broad scope of neurological techniques and compression and length techniques to tap into the connective tissue, to tap into the nervous system, but simply,
Yeah.
right? To
Right.
give people a baseline that they can use at home, to then expand and say what else is out there. And I tell you, if that's what this book does, is brings more people into our community and continues to grow what is already a emerging field of science and therapeutic techniques, then I've done my job. You know, I've done what I set out to do, was to just expose this brilliant group of like-minded individuals that are out there, and to get more of America, more of the world, to know that pain does not need to be a day-to-day event to try to eat out of you.
Amen. Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you for your work. And I could talk to you all day. You're such a bright mind in this field. So thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me and share your brilliance with the Fascia Freedom Fighters tribe. And for those who want to check you out more, your website is meltmethod.com, right?
That's right. That's right. There's
Meltmethod.com.
more streaming videos are on the way, and other products and other tools and training. So if people are
Great.
interested in really learning more about it, I'm here for you as a resource. And you know, I have a blog, and I'm always blogging on many different topics. So certainly, I hope to just continue to share the information. So thank you very much for
Great.
having me into your group, and I look forward to seeing other presenters come and chat with you as well, and to continue to
Great.
build.
Thank you so much, Sue.
Thanks for having me.
Bye.